Hi everyone, I'm Danny. Welcome to Neither Here Nor There, Conversations Across.
Moving to a new country. Hi everyone, my name is Christina and we're here with a friend of ours.
Hi, my name is Sagar.
Hi Sagar, we're really excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me here.
Today we're going to learn a little bit about how you decided to move all the way here to Taiwan with no connections here
Sure.
and make this your new home.
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about it.
Perfect.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Yeah, again, my name is Sagar. Currently, I work as Director of Product at Coupang in Taiwan. Prior to this, I used to work at Amazon in the US and in the UK.
And for those who don't know Coupang, it's an e-commerce company.
Yes, for those who don't know Coupang, it's a Korean e-commerce company which is live in majorly two markets. One, of course, is South Korea, and then they have a recent international expansion going on in Taiwan.
Okay, so I got a brief background of your history. You lived in Japan a little bit before this too.
Oh, yes, many years ago, I used to live in Japan. I lived there for 4 years.
Yeah. So you've lived in a couple of places around the world.
Actually, if you're keeping account, then I think, so I grew up in India.
Yeah.
Japan was the first country I lived in outside of India. Then I moved to the US. Then I moved to UK. Then I went back to US for some time, and then in between I explored living in Spain for like 3-4 months, and then I moved to Taiwan last year. So yeah, it's been a few moves. Yeah,
that's a couple of places. That's not just Asia or just the West. There's a couple of places.
There. Yeah.
So I know you studied in America, right?
Right.
That's why you work. That's why you studied there, and then did you work there as well?
So I did my undergrad in India.
Okay.
Then I went to Japan for my first job, and I went to US for my MBA. So I studied in the US for 2 years.
That's how we got connected.
That's how we got connected. And then I worked in the US for a few years as well.
Yeah. Okay. There's so many questions that I have so many questions.
Let's start with maybe like this whole move from like India to Japan. Like how was that experience for you, the process? It's quite different culture.
Yeah, sure. I think, so this is way back. I graduated in 2009. So we are talking about the global financial crisis, which was just 2008. And, we had campus recruiting going on. It was very tough for people who were not to get jobs or whatever. But for me, I was fortunate. I was really lucky. I had 2 offers at that time. One was from Sony in Japan, and the other was from Samsung in Bangalore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I had to make a choice.
Right.
And there was no precedent in the sense that, generally when something like this happens, you go talk to some senior or some alumni who have made the move before you, ask them a bunch of questions. Right. This time what was happening is the company was coming to the campus for the first time.
Yeah.
So I had to just make a choice by myself. And I spoke to my parents, but they also did not know.
Did they lean one way or the other?
Not really. I mean, my mom was like, just stay closer to us, which is Bangalore, right? Yeah. Because my parents are close to Mumbai. But I think from a career standpoint, I knew that the move to Tokyo would be really appealing and amazing, and even the job description or whatever, looked really nice for the offer which was coming from Tokyo. So I just said, okay, I know nothing, but let's just go ahead with it. And my backup plan was, if things don't work out well for me, I can just come back after a year or so. But I ended up living there for 4 years. So that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Were you was the language at all something that you were maybe thinking it was something to consider?
I think language comes much later. When I got the offer, I didn't even have a passport.
Wow.
So there was no plan of leaving India or traveling.
This is a big move.
Yeah, it was a pretty big move. I applied for a passport maybe a couple of months after I had signed the offer. And I knew that the move will happen a few months later. I think, now coming to your question on language, so I think the company had made it clear to us that they will provide language training before we make the move to Bangalore. So I was like, okay, I will just go do the training and, we'll see how it goes. As you can imagine, I didn't have a passport, so I'd never visited any other country. I didn't know any better on what the challenges are going to be. I was, again, going back to the financial guy, I was just happy I have a job and a really good offer in my hand.
Yeah.
So I was just super excited about all of those things.
And can you maybe walk us through that? Because I didn't realize this was your big exploration outside of India, landing in Japan with all these completely different world, right?
Yeah, I think it was pretty incredible. So it was 2 more people. It was total 3 of us.
Okay, at least you had some friends coming in.
I had some friends coming in who were recruited from my campus. So we did our training together in Bangalore, and then we went to Tokyo. And I think for all three of us, it was the first time in Japan. And so the training helped a little bit, but we knew nothing about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still remember, I mean, when I landed, it was pretty crazy in some sense, you know, like very clean roads, for example, and very orderly traffic, and I'm not used to any of that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I remember very well, like I was like a wide-eyed kid just looking outside all the time.
Yeah.
Like, what is this place, you know?
Yeah.
And that continued for like a good 6 months or so. Every day was some surprise, something new. I would learn about the country, and it was just very different from what I'd seen in India.
Was that a good thing? Did you enjoy that? Because that's quite a change. That's culture shock. That's like change. That's everything.
I would say in hindsight, it was definitely good.
Yeah.
There were challenges, of course,
Yeah.
you know, when you're going through it. But when I look back on that experience, I think it was one of the best decisions I had ever made to just take the plunge and everything.
What made you make the plunge though? Like, what was the deciding factor?
I think the deciding factor was, again, at that point, I was 22, 23. I was just very focused on my career, and I just thought this would be a good move. This was a better decision for my career.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, at that time, I think I was like partially sure I want to do an MBA in the future.
Okay.
I thought, you know how it works, it's build a profile, get national experience, things like that. So I thought this was going to help me. But again, you know, there's no surety or certainty or guarantee, but I just thought I'll try my best. So the decision-making factor was that what's the good thing for my career.
Yeah.
But again, it could go either way because, as I said, this was my batch. My class was the first time the company was doing this, and after 1 year, they saw how we progressed in the company, picking up the language and the culture. So they decided to expand the program, meaning they decided to hire more and more people in subsequent classes.
Wow.
But there were some others who, when they came to Tokyo, I mean, for me, these were now my juniors, right?
Right.
Some of them really struggled.
I was
some
gonna
of them
say.
got homesick.
Yeah.
Someone had to go back within a year.
Yeah.
So it just depends, right?
It sounds like for you wasn't.
Yeah,
that
for
big
me
of a
it was
challenge.
not. Yeah, I was okay. I think mostly because I picked up the language. It was fun. Learning a new language. I made a few friends. I think the people in my office were very kind and friendly, and I just started having a good time.
What about the people? Did you get to know the people that didn't have a good time?
Yeah, sure. Because you know we used to we were in the same office. We used to hang out together. Yeah. I got to know the people who didn't have a good time as well. Yeah. As I said, at least one case I still remember. He had to go back within a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where was he from?
I mean, he was from India.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. The company's program, right? And I said they were hiring for the first time. Later, I got to know when I was becoming friends with HR. They had started the program to hire people from two countries, India and China.
Oh.
So there were other people of Chinese origin who had moved to Tokyo.
Yeah.
And there were people of Indian origin, like myself and my friends, who
Yeah.
had moved to Tokyo. This particular instance I'm talking about is another friend from India who just didn't get along well and didn't really like. I was struggling really
With the amount of changes.
with everything.
Yeah. For
Because
you,
that is quite a few changes.
it's a lot.
It's a lot of big
Everything
change.
from food to language
everything,
to
Lifestyle, the way you walk on the road,
everything,
right?
everything changes. Yeah.
For you, what was the biggest, I think, difficulty, in adapting?
I would say in the beginning it was food.
Food?
Yeah, because I mean there's a big difference.
Yeah.
Now I know there's a big difference between
There's a lot of spices. And
a lot of spices and less spices.
Less spices,
right? For lack of a better term.
Yeah.
So the initial everything used to taste really bland.
Yeah.
I don't know how to
Eat here.
eat this basically. And then in the company cafeteria there used to be a curry section, which I now know like the Japanese curry is really a thing.
Yes,
it's actually different from Indian curry. It's different.
Oh.
But I used to take that more often than not.
Okay.
So just while I get used to it. And then I think for the first year I also ended up cooking with the other two guys who were with me. Used to like go home after work, cook and eat, and then but after a while it just got so much. And then of course work was also picking up, getting intense. So I think after a year I got used to the food.
Yeah.
It was anyway too tiring to go cook every day. So we just stopped all that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think food and language. I think for the most, I think the rest was okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean the standard of living is very high as we know in Tokyo. So there's no real difficulty as such, right? In living. So all of that is fine. I think these are some of the things as I said, like food, language, which can be challenging. But if you pick it up and if you have a few friends and you keep practicing, it was
works
all
out.
okay. It was all
Yeah. Wow. So I definitely want us to move to the US. But before I do that, I'm curious, did Japan have as much of an impact on your other two friends that kind of moved with you versus you kind of, coming back to Asia, like East Asia?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I would say all three of us, maybe different impacts, but I'll just give one example. One of them is still there.
Oh. Since then.
Since then, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
he still
lives in Tokyo.
I
think he got the PR in Japan.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
life-changing decision.
Yeah, pretty much life-changing decision. So I think he, at the same time, he was the first one to quit Sony as compared to the two of us.
Okay.
He quit, he went back to India. I think he was just trying a couple of other things, but quickly realized he misses Tokyo. So, but in that gap, I think he also got married.
Okay.
To a girl from India. So he had to now convince her as well, right? Now it's not just about him.
Right,
So to convince her as well. And I think it took him some time, but he was eventually able to convince her. And I think she does something similar. Sure, we'll give it a shot. And, but now both of them are there. They have a kid. Who was born in Japan.
Love it.
The kid now speaks Japanese and I guess English.
I love it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But I think it was, to your question, I think it was a big impact on all three of us, right? I think in different. The other guy who now lives in Germany, he met his then girlfriend, now wife, in Japan. She's American. They met in Tokyo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, this is like for all three of you life-changing decisions.
I know, right? Because you have a scenario for each one of them.
Yeah.
One went home, one went abroad, and one stayed.
Yeah.
Wow.
So interesting.
Yeah.
I love it. No, I mean, especially from your perspective of, I didn't even have a passport. I didn't think about going abroad, and now this is like really changed the course of people's like journeys.
Absolutely. I think until at that point, as I said, I was not very keen or excited about with travel or living abroad.
Right.
I just really enjoyed living in India at that point. In fact, in undergrad, a lot of my friends who used to seek internships outside of India and go to Europe or US, I was just happy being in Bangalore.
Yeah.
So, everything changed. I think everything changed. After I went to Japan, everything changed.
Yeah, and then at some point you decided you wanted to get an MBA in the US.
Yes.
Was that a targeted decision?
No, it was not actually. I think when I went to Japan, I think I had kept all my options open, like in Asia, India, Europe, US. And I think over the course of time, I narrowed down US universities because the more and more I read about it, on the rankings or whatever, everybody said that the best business education happened in the US. So I thought, that's what I will do. So yeah. And then I think I started preparing and everything. And I think, as I said, after 4 years of Japan, I was fortunate enough to get into UPenn, Wharton, and that's when I decided to make the move to US.
Which is another culture shock. And
that was a completely different story again.
Japan.
Because now it's literally East versus West, right?
Yeah.
And I had spent so much time adapting myself to East, which is Japan.
Yeah.
And then I approved myself from Japan and go to US.
Yeah.
Generally, when Indians make this move, and I've seen this for other seniors who made it before me or after me, it's generally quite smooth. Because India and US, sure, new country, but language is the same. We grew up watching American movies, Friends or whatever, those kind of things. American food is part of India now. So it's a
relatively
smooth move. For me, it's not.
Yeah.
Again, there's a big cultural shock and everything. I'm like, what is happening? I think the first 6 months in Philly, I was very, very overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then a lot of my friends just make fun of me, like, dude, you've just become Japanese. You should stop calling yourself as Indian. But I'm like, no, I'm still very much Indian, but this move is just hard, Yeah, because, again, I think the main difference I saw was the US society culture is very individualistic. Mm-hmm. In Japan, it was more about, the group orientation. Collective. And, that was a big change for me to get used to that. Yeah.
I'll give you some validation there, because when me and my sisters moved to America for college as well, and we grew up in Hong Kong, we all had a bit of culture shock. And we had, we'd visited America over the years. Our dad's American, but we also had culture shock. So if that gives you some...
Yeah, exactly. I still have very simple stories. I still remember, and I tell people, for example, my first month in Japan, I remember I'm at one of these stations trying to figure out the station or the language or whatever.
For the metro, you mean?
For the metro. And some random person will come up and looking at my face, they'll figure out that I'm struggling, they'll ask me, try to help me. And I'm like, wow, this person doesn't need to do this, but they're still trying to make sure that I figure it out, I get to my destination and whatnot. And I'm very thankful.
Yeah.
And then I go to US. And my first month, I'm standing in a line like to get a coffee or something at a local coffee shop, and they're asking me this question in like fast American English. I'm like, brown water or sparkling water or still water or sparkling water. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. And then like, people waiting for you. Can you just move ahead? And I'm like, oh my god, this is so stressful. Yeah, things like that.
It is stressful.
It is quite stressful.
Wow.
I had similar experiences too with like just the words there.
Yeah. So I say, it took me some time to get used to it. I'm like, okay, cool, I got it. You have to know your stuff here. People are not going to be that polite or kind, which is, I guess, it's okay. It's just cultural. And then different.
Even after that, so you moved to Tokyo, and that was already a change. And then you moved to America, and that was an even bigger change. Mm-hmm. And then after that, you decided to move again to another area before we get back into there.
Yeah, but like you did live in the US for a few years.
Yeah, I think so. After I moved to US. For that particular stint, I was there for 3 years. 2 years in Philly and 1 year in Seattle. As I said, I think the first 6 months were really tough, but after that, I started getting used to it. I started sort of giving up whatever I had learned in Japan and, focus more on what it takes to be successful in US, whatever that means, right? Just adapt yourself, whatever, school, college, all of that, everything. I think by the end of my MBA, I think I was pretty comfortable. With the US setup, and then the move to Seattle, which is where my job was, I started working at Amazon. It was very nice, and I started enjoying living in the US. So I guess I had partially given up whatever I had learned in Japan, and just adapted myself to live in the US, and I started having fun.
Well, this part was also really interesting because you moved from Philly to Seattle, which is east to west America, which is also a bit of a change too. And
I used to wonder, because I of course had American friends who used to study with, and they used to keep talking about, oh my god, this coast and that coast, and I'm like, you guys don't even realize, for me, I'm talking about like moving from Japan versus this each. I'm like, how different can it be? Come on, guys, it's the same country, So it's all very relative. It's all very relative on what your basis and what you're comparing things against. So yes, it was different as I can now relate, but it took me a while to understand, okay, what really is different, right? And I think I really enjoyed the West Coast more than the East Coast, and I think living in Seattle was fun. Working at Amazon was fun.
I'm curious, how did you compare making friends in Japan, for example, or interacting with people versus then learning how to do that in the US? Because I think it's very different the way people interact with each other. And I'm just very curious how you manage that.
So I think this is a really good question. So in Japan, when I used to try and make friends with the locals, everybody used to look at it as my attempt to assimilate and to know more and be curious.
Okay.
When I started doing that in the US, I used to get comments like, oh my god, you're so racist. You only make friends with Americans. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, wait, what? You're like, sure, you're making a decision who to be friends with based on their country of origin, that is being racist. I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, I didn't know this is how someone would take it. And I'm like, I thought I was following the same approach which I did in another country, right? If I want to get to know more, I have to interact more with the locals, but people had an issue with it. So it was again another type of culture shock or whatever. I'm like, oh okay, you have to be careful here. So then I'm like, oh okay, I'll be friends with everyone. It doesn't matter. But I think in hindsight, I did not make many American friends, I guess, for whatever reason. And even in Seattle, I think what happened is I used to hang out either with my Wharton folks or my Lauder folks, or I think Indian community at that time was very small in Seattle, so not that much, or my colleagues from Amazon and everything. So so that's what happened.
That's interesting.
Wow, that's like
for example, like I have never I wouldn't say never. I have attended one American wedding during my time in the US and one Japanese wedding during my time in Tokyo, if you can use that as a lens, if how close you were able to get to someone who is a local.
I would argue though, I think perhaps this is my interpretation of it. The Japanese invitation might weigh more.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think people there are not as
No, they're not.
Usually just like
very
whoever wants to
close,
come.
Yeah. It's a very close society for sure. Yeah. It's hard to make friends, and then this is again, more and more I got to know about Japanese culture. I understood that they will not open up to you. It'll take a long time for them to open up to you, even as friends, and that's an entire process. Just trust or whatever because you're a foreigner or things like that. But again, I think even in that sense, I think I was quite fortunate. Was able to make friends with other locals. We used to travel together. I remember we did one trip to Thailand with some of my Japanese friends. We had a big bunch and everything. So yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Did they speak English?
No, not a lot. Because we spoke, and then the three of us, we spoke. So all three of us used to all hang out with all these. We're all part of the same group. So we mostly spoke Japanese.
That's so cool. Yeah. Can you imagine these three Indian guys and a bunch of Japanese?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Oh, and I think that played a huge role. Knowing the language.
Yeah.
That played a huge role in me having a good time in Japan.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
The people that I know that moved to Japan also learn the language, and I think it's something that you need to do.
Yeah. I mean, I came across other foreigners who had not picked up the language. Either they thought because their stint is going to be for a very short time, like 3 months, 6 months. But again, some people started that way and ended up there for being more than 5 years. So, you never know. Yeah, you never know. Yeah, how long it's going to be. Yeah.
And did you make you said you didn't make like a lot of good friends in America?
Well, not American friends. Again, depends. I made good friends, but if you ask me how many of them are like American, then it's hard. And then also, it's difficult. Like who exactly? When I say American, what do I exactly mean? Right?
Yeah, that's fair.
White Americans? Do I mean Americans? Like I don't know. For example, like Christina.
Are we Americans?
Like you were born in America, but you identify as
whatever you do.
whatever your parents are. So it's very difficult to answer that question.
That's fair.
Sure, I have friends who
live there.
Who live there. Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. That's very fair.
It's very hard.
Because I'm technically American, but I say that I'm from Hong Kong.
Yeah. And I recently had this conversation with another set of friends who now live in Goa, and this particular couple, the girl is Indian, the guy is Indian American. We spoke about the sense of identity. Mm-hmm. So he is a second generation immigrant. His parents immigrated and he was born in India, but he said for the longest of time he just couldn't figure out whether he's Indian or American. And because at home the parents of course are Indian, right?
Yes.
Because they went to America when they were adults with the kid or whatever, but he grew up in America. So when he goes to school, he's being exposed to all these American values and American culture, and he goes home, it's all these Indian values, and it's so confusing to him. So for the longest of time, I think he had a identity crisis. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is like who do you talk about these things, right? It's very difficult. And then I think eventually he became comfortable with the idea that he's very much American. And he connects with American values. Sure, he has Indian origin, but he himself is American. So I think like for someone like me, I definitely not have that, which I am very grateful to, because that becomes your identity and your grounding.
But do you think at your core you still think you're very much more Indian?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I think I'm Indian who is exploring different places, right? I mean, sure, I adapt. I try very hard to adapt wherever I go. But at the core, I'm Indian. I'm an Indian guy with Indian values.
Not yet Japanese.
No, I mean, that was just people making fun of me. Because I used to try really hard, just to assimilate in the Japanese culture. Like what I think is the best compliment I have received as part of my efforts is I was talking to someone on the phone in Japanese language with a Japanese person.
Yes.
And the other person just couldn't tell.
I love that for you.
That is amazing.
That's amazing.
And I still remember that. I'm like, wow, clearly have made some progress here.
So much progress.
Yeah. To be mistaken as a Japanese person.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
cool?
Every foreign language dream,
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay, so now this brings us to after staying in Seattle for a year or so, you started contemplating maybe having an itch, or what happened?
No. So that was not an itch. I think that was the only one which was not driven by choice.
Okay.
The whole US visas, work visas, lottery, not getting the lottery. As I said, I was actually very happy by then.
Okay.
I was enjoying living in the US.
Yes.
I enjoyed Seattle. But the visa lottery did not happen, so I had to make a move again. This time, the company was supportive, and I decided to move to the UK. I mean, I had a bunch of options to pick from. I decided to move to the UK.
Yeah.
I think initially I was a little bit sad, as I said, because it was not driven by choice.
Right.
Like I was forced
to
move again. But eventually, again, after a couple of months of moving to UK, I was like, okay, cool, new country, let's explore this. And I ended up being there for 2 years. I did explore in Europe as well. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, that was nice as well. Yeah.
And then
that seems like an easier, smoother ride.
Yeah. And so actually, by that move, as you can see, I think I know what to expect, because I've already made a few moves by then. So I know what to expect. I know what I'm going to go through. I know some of the challenges. I'm mentally prepared.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think challenges in the UK were mostly about just the language and the pronunciation.
Right.
That's about everything else.
Yeah. It's much easier.
I mean, it's London. It's a very
international city.
Yeah. Like you're working at Amazon. Sure. No major challenges as such. Yeah. I mean, challenges what? Like just to figure out where to get groceries? Yeah, sure. By then you know.
Or which side of the road to look.
Yeah, that's about it, right? Yeah, which are minor when you look at everything else I had experienced.
For sure.
Till that point. So that was a pretty smooth move. Yeah. And I enjoyed living there. And I think then I realized traveling in Europe is very easy if you're living in one of the cities in Europe. So I made the most of it, especially in the second half of my stint. As I said, I was there for a little over 2 years.
Yeah.
So did a lot of travel, a lot of fun. And then the next move I think was again a personal choice. That was again career related. I realized that if I want to further expand my career at Amazon, most of the opportunities are in the headquarters, which is in Seattle.
Yeah.
So I decided to move back to Seattle. And I stayed there, ended up staying there for another 3-4 years. Yeah. And then I think after that, maybe you can call the itch.
Okay. So after 3-4 years, you got an itch.
Yes, that is definitely itch because by that time I did not have any immigration issues. Everything was fine at work. Everything is fine. But no, it's getting boring. I was like, oh, what is missing in my life? Because I've not moved.
But it wasn't a change of job itch. It's I want a change of country itch.
Yeah, no, it was not change of. So I think the difference in this case is, so by that, so all these other moves, I was mostly by myself. I was single. I think in Seattle, then I had a partner who I was living with. So I think then it was a decision that we had to both make it together, right? That are you going to continue living in Seattle? Yeah. Just change cities in the US or change countries? And that, of course, was a long discussion, and not one discussion, like multiple conversations, between the two of us, with other friends as well. And we said we actually want to explore living in Europe, mainland Europe, not London because I already lived there.
Yeah.
And also, I think the fact that we were in our 30s, again, just the opportunity to learn a new language and everything. That is truer, let's say, in one of these mainland countries like France, Germany, Spain, Italy versus the UK.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So then we said, okay, maybe we should go to Spain. And I think when we told our friends, they thought this is pretty crazy. Like, why would you
leave Seattle?
Why would you give up the setup and everything? Because if you like doing it.
Yeah.
And that was the truth, actually. There was nothing else driving it. Just because we thought that's what we should do at that stage of our life. So I quit Amazon, we packed our bags, we went home for some time in India, and then we went to Spain. We explored things for 3-4 months. I mean, and I think there we tried to explore the digital nomad visa.
Okay.
And eventually it didn't go through, but the 3-4 months was still a lot of fun. Yeah. I think, if that visa had gone through, I don't think Taiwan would have happened.
Yeah.
I still remember that I was in Barcelona in my apartment, sipping my coffee when I saw this recruiter reach out to me on LinkedIn about a job offer in Korea. And at that time, I was still very hopeful about the digital nomad visa. So I was like, I don't want to go to Korea. I'm very happy sipping my coffee
in Spain,
in Barcelona. So I was actually not interested at all. But at the same time, I always, go through at least one conversation. There's no harm with a 15-minute or 20-minute coffee chat. Yeah. So I entertained his request, went on a coffee chat, and 3-4 months later, that visa is not working. This guy is really trying hard to pursue me. And I was like, I went through the interviews, and I think I also met very cool people.
Yeah.
Through the course of my interviews.
Oh, okay.
So I thought, oh, cool, I might actually entertain this. And then of course, I have to discuss with my partner. Like,
Right.
hey,
Yeah.
by the way,
we might need to go to Asia instead of Europe.
Yeah.
And then the recruiter said that, we have two options. We can either put you in Korea or Taiwan. So I said, at this point, I think.
Sorry, just to
sure.
interrupt. At this point, you've not been to either Korea nor
neither.
Taiwan.
No.
So this is a blind decision.
Yeah, blind decision. So that's what I told him. I told him, I've not been to either of these two countries. I don't know any better. Sure, I can read about them, but I think I would like to make the decision based on what the actual job profile, what the role is about, right? So then he said, sure, I can give you some job description and everything. So he gave me that. And I thought, at least on paper, the one in Taiwan looked more interesting. So I said, okay, put me in touch with someone who is recruiting for the Taiwan role.
Yeah.
And that's how the rest of the things proceeded. So I think I must have made the decision in maybe a couple of minutes, right?
Wow.
Read the two job descriptions and then decide and tell him. And then, that's how things turned out.
And you ended up in Taiwan.
And then I ended up in Taiwan,
Yeah, I completely forgot that part of your story is also Taiwan. I mean, you took us through the east and the west.
So many places,
So many places, and now we're here.
Now we're here. Now it's been 10 months,
Yeah. So how have you liked Taiwan so far?
I mean, I like it. I've had this conversation with Christina a couple of times. I mean, it was a surprise.
Yeah.
Because until then, right, as I explained to you, my exposure was mostly Japan. Right? I had done a couple of business trips to China. So I wish to say, sure, I have explored East Asia, but Taiwan is very different. Right? Yeah, Taiwan is different. And I ended up liking Taiwan because I would say it was somewhere in the middle. I'll tell you what I mean by that. Right? Like, for example, in Japan, there was long, intense work hours, right? And then sure, people are polite, but then there's expectation that you also will be polite, which is fine. But then after a point, people think it gets very tiring, because you cannot give out your true emotions or what you're feeling. I think here it's a little more relaxed. Everything works fine. The quality of living is still very high. There's no so much social pressure as such. The food is really nice, So I really started enjoying, being here. Yeah.
Have you had trouble with the language, getting around?
Yeah, a little bit. Yes, I think the language is challenging.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I was excited about getting some lessons, but I think the work has just been busier than I expected. Yeah. So I haven't had the chance.
Can I just also say, it depends when you're asking him this question. Sometimes the job is very challenging, sometimes it's getting very hectic.
Yeah, but I think in the beginning, I think, again, maybe thanks to my manager, he ensured that the initial onboarding is not super tough on me, which was good because I'm going to a new country and understanding the challenges. But I think after the initial period, it's just getting busier and busier. Also because the business is growing, the company is growing, the responsibilities is growing, team is growing, everybody's hiring. I also have to hire folks. In fact, I still remember the first time I met Christina, I told her, where can I hire local people? I need to hire more people. Local people on my team.
Yeah.
So I think because of that, I have not had the chance to really go deep into the language. Just a couple of phrases here and there, which help me get around, things like that.
Yeah.
But so language is challenging, but I still get by,
What about at work? Do you guys speak English or Chinese?
Oh, at work is English. Otherwise, it would be almost impossible. At work, everybody speaks English.
Okay, so you have to hire multilingual people.
Yes. Yeah, it also depends on job description. I mean, some levels, at least, even just English is okay. At some levels, we need them to speak both.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends.
Okay.
So most people speak English at the
but again, it's a international company.
Yeah.
Korean company from Taiwan. It's an international company.
For sure.
So the expectation is that you will know to speak, to communicate in English.
Yeah. Okay. Huh.
Wow. And so this, just to clarify, because you're here without necessarily a timeline that you've set for yourself, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a job, but I say this to everyone. As long as they like me and I like them, there's
But essentially, you're making this your new home base.
Yeah. Pretty
wow.
much, yeah.
And you just decided that just some sipping coffee in Barcelona.
Yeah. So again, the conversation I think I had with my partner was, let's give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I mean, any decision like this, if you just make it sound permanent, and I going back to what I said to myself when I was making the move to Japan, right?
Mm-hmm.
if I make it sound permanent, it just sounds too stressful because there's so many unknowns. And hence I said to myself back then, I'll give it a shot, a year. If things work out, I'll stay. If not, I can always come back.
Can I just say, it sounds exactly like how I process things. We've had this conversation and I told you, what's the worst thing that can happen? You just go back, right? Remember how we had like conversations about how to not make decisions so permanent? I think that's the mentality.
I don't know why, but somehow the way that he explained it
makes more sense.
Seems different. Maybe not. It's not different.
He's better at explaining it.
But maybe it's just listening to the entire saga as well of like moving from this place to that place to this place to that place, and then at the end, now you're here because you were in Spain for 3 months, and now you got a permanent job here. And I guess that's the thing; it's not permanent. You got to give yourself the space to move on.
I think so. To your question, I think one of the questions people still ask me, like, will you still move? I'm like, yeah, maybe. And, and also it's like a little bit of, I don't know. It just depends on how things go. For even within the company, right? We have offices in Korea, Bangalore, China, Seattle, San Francisco. So that, and I see people moving. So that is always a high possibility.
Yeah.
Just how I moved within Amazon to 2 different locations, right? That is point 1. Point 2, even if I keep the company aside, just personally, if I see, as I said, like after Amazon in Seattle, sure, there was an itch. Who knows, there will be another one. So, and that's one aspect. And the other thing is, my partner and I, we also keep talking about moving back to India because of parents.
I was going to ask you, is that a thing?
So it's there somewhere, It's always part of the discussion. So,
do you think it would be hard to move back to India after this world trip?
I think so. For me, it will be. Yeah. It's a big change, as I said, right? I mean, it's been 15, 16 years that I have not called India as home.
And you haven't properly worked in India, right? Other than internships. So this is a complete different world also.
It's cool. I remember even when my US lottery did not go through, and I was a little bit panicking. I was like, okay, what next? And I was talking to all my friends, and I was considering all options on the table, including India. And one of my Indian friends told me, hey, Sagar, you don't realize this, but I don't think you're prepared to work in India. You've never worked in India. It's going to be different for you. You're already spoiled in some sense. Working in the US or Japan or whatever. I'm like, I don't know what you mean, man. I mean, it's India. And it's like, no, I'm telling you, it might be difficult for you. So, and this was back then. This was 10 years ago. For another 10 years, I've worked in different countries, and now moving back to India. Sure, there will be some challenges, but I think at the same time, it's pros and cons, right? I mean, I have missed so many of my family events because of work, college, exams, this, that. So, I'll be closer. So, as I said, there will be pros and cons.
After everywhere that you've moved, I'm pretty sure it'll just be another adapting experience.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. That would be exciting. That's quite exciting to move back.
But going off of that, because you mentioned, right, you don't know if you'll have the itch again, like maybe you want to move, but does it not get tiring? I'm really curious because I am tired.
No, I think for me, no, not really.
Honestly. Really? Okay.
No, I think so far it hasn't. I don't know if it's now, if I should call it a habit or just things I look forward to. It doesn't get tired, especially if it's a choice, right? If it's forced, then sure, it might get tired. But so far it has not actually. Yeah. And also, except Spain, which was just 3-4 months, all the other moves were like a good 2, 3, 4 years. So there's enough time to like settle down before you decide to pack your bags again and things like that.
But I think the idea of starting again.
But that's part of the excitement, right? Yeah.
Some people view it as excitement.
Yeah,
some people view it as like, I have to go set up everything again, make new friends, have new routines.
So that I think that is a personality type.
Yeah.
Some people love being in one place and going to the same neighborhood and everybody knows you and everything, right? Of course, I can understand why that would be appealing to some people. There's a sense of comfort. And maybe peace and calm that comes with it. But there's an excitement with something like this, I think. And that's why I'm saying it just depends on what you're looking for, on how you want to, make these choices.
What was the longest place you've stayed? Like, how long have you stayed in the longest place? It was 4 years in Seattle, right?
Yeah. I think I remember 2018 December 4 years in Seattle. Yeah.
Was that the longest place you've lived in the last 15 years?
Yeah, yes, it is. And I think the second longest will be Tokyo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I wonder what'll happen if you move to a place and go past that mark.
Taiwan could be it. Who knows?
You get the itch again?
I mean, I think so. See, I think so because Seattle was a good example of getting the itch, right? Because I had already crossed, I guess, before that it was the 3.5 years of Tokyo, right?
Yeah.
So I passed that mark and it was right around the 4-year mark.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, what next?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could be in Taiwan for the next 10 years. Who knows?
That would be very interesting. Very interesting.
There's a growing Indian community in Taiwan.
Yeah. Well, so she says. And international community, just in general, right?
Yeah. I mean, at least at least in my company, the number of internationals has just grown.
That's amazing.
Just in 10 months. Yeah.
It's like number of like hundreds we're talking about.
Yeah.
Of people that are not from Taiwan coming to work at this company.
That is so amazing. What is it that's bringing people to Taiwan right now? Because lately we have been talking about like how we feel like we see a lot more international people in the streets. What's bringing people here? All
jobs.
Yeah, the jobs, of course, will always be one reason.
Yeah,
right? Like, since, I don't know, time eternal, like, more opportunities, better opportunities and everything. But I also think there's more, right? I mean, quality of life, generally, and it's a very peaceful, safe country, And then there's enough things to do, travel, good food.
Yeah.
Can we maybe double click on this quality of life? Because I know we've talked about it off camera, but I do think like people probably do not appreciate enough about the quality of life here.
I'm surprised, actually.
Right? Like, I think it's compared to at least all these other places you lived, it does have some sort of advantages in that sense, right? Yeah. What have you experienced, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, for example, like, if you compare, let's say Tokyo versus this, of course, Tokyo is a very popular city, big city, everything, very modern. But most of those things you will get here, right? Like, the metro system is pretty good. Sure, Tokyo is more denser and everything, but here is still pretty good.
Yeah.
Right? That's one example.
Yeah.
I mean, the bus system is pretty good. So public transportation is taken care of. Now, on the other hand, Tokyo can get very crowded.
Yeah.
Taipei is not that crowded.
Yeah.
It's pretty okay. Yeah. So, there are certain benefits for sure. Yeah. I think the only one thing I've told Christina when it comes to big cities is the restaurants close early here.
They do.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah. That was a big surprise. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, because the conversation we were having is his friends back home would ask him like, how is life in Taiwan? And the only thing he had come up about like the negative is that the restaurant's closed too early. I was like, that's a great, like if that's the only thing you can complain about, that's pretty good,
That is pretty good, actually.
Sometimes I'm like, it's around, let's say 8 in the evening, and then I start thinking where to go to have dinner and everything. Then I'm like, oh my god, everything's going to shut in an hour.
Yeah.
Or maybe before that. So you have to, reach there, make an order, eat food and come out. That's not always feasible.
Yeah.
So then I realized, here you have to plan at least a little bit. And of course, there are some chains which will be open late in the night and izakaya and everything. But Taiwanese restaurants or most restaurants, they close early.
They do. People eat dinner earlier.
Eat dinner early, yeah.
They definitely do.
But there's another thing I've never understood so far in 10 months is there are, of course, Taiwanese people in my office, but we generally work till like 6:30, so I don't know when do they have dinner. When you say early, what is early? Is it 7:30? Is it 8?
Well, actually, maybe other than the people working at the office, people eat here dinner at like 6.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I'm saying. I know people work in my office till 6 or 6:30, so I don't know. Like maybe for them, they have dinner later or something.
Yeah, maybe they do, or I don't know if they order in food also. That's a thing.
That is a good question, though. He's right, though. A lot of people stay and work very late, like 7 and 8.
They eat like midnight snacks is a big deal in Taiwan as well. I don't know if you've gone to
that makes sense because you have dinner so early.
Yeah. That's why the night markets and everything is to target that segment. Right? After 9 p.m. you want to eat, you eat junk food.
Eating culture in Taiwan.
Yeah. It's a lot of food.
It's good food.
It's good food. It's very good.
That was another big surprise. I tell Christina, nobody told me this, or maybe it didn't come up in my research.
Yeah.
Food here is really, really good.
It didn't come up in your research? That is like,
I'm very surprised.
Food here is really, really good, guys. Check it out.
It really is.
So it was a big, positive, pleasant surprise for me.
Yeah, I'm good. And it's definitely got a lot more, I think that it has a lot more spices than in Japan.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Good spicy
so.
food.
Yeah, they do have some spice here.
And even like, I mean, and not just me, because I told you there are other expats in the office, and they all keep talking about the same thing. The food here is really good. And everything.
Can we ask where are they from?
Different places. Like I have one colleague who is from Indonesia. I have a teammate who is from Singapore. I of course have other Indians in the office. I have some Koreans that I work with. Yeah.
So like from
Yeah, different places. Yeah.
And is it mostly Asia places? Like, just Asian.
The expats? No, they're Americans as well.
Oh, okay, interesting.
They're Americans. I think. Yeah, I know a couple of people from Europe who moved from the UK. Yeah, it's everywhere.
It's growing. They're all over here.
That whole conversation makes me just feel some pride in Taiwan. Actually, it's quite nice, especially the food part, because I love the food.
The food is
something
really
like can't live out.
Yeah. As I said, I didn't know, so it was a big positive surprise.
I can't believe you didn't know. Actually, in your research,
I only know about the bubble tea, which is obviously really good.
The bubble tea.
But the food, I had no idea.
Ooh, have you had stinky tofu yet?
Oh yes, of course.
You have. He said, "Of course."
He's been here 10 months. What do you think he's been doing?
I'm sorry, there's so many people that come here and are like, I'm not trying.
Oh, it was...
he doesn't love it.
Yeah, it was not easy, but I've tried it for sure.
I'm proud of you for trying that.
I
love it.
Yeah.
Wow. So I think in terms of like just taking us from a broader perspective now, looking at like all your experiences and all of this, like, what do you think has been like maybe some highlights of pros and highlights of like cons of your experiences?
I think the pros have just been the opportunity to explore different places. And I think it just helps to put things in perspective a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It obviously broadens your worldview. It helps you to understand, different people. And I think this is something I remember I even wrote in my Wharton essays all this many years ago, that at the end of the day, people do have common values.
Yeah.
But you have to go deep and take some effort
to
find that out. Surface level might be different, but ultimately the values are actually very, very similar.
Yeah.
Right? And when you discover that and when you explore that, it actually is a very good feeling. It's a really nice feeling. And I have been able to do that as a result of these opportunities I got in different places I visited and things like that. So that's where I put the pros. I think cons is just missing out on family events and everything. I can remember after I quit Amazon, I quit Seattle, I went home for some time, as I mentioned, before the move to Spain. And there was a patch in between where I was able to attend a bunch of family events in a sequence, and all my relatives were like, "Wait, what is happening?
Why do you keep showing up?
How are we seeing you at all these small functions?"
Yeah.
And then because I'm here and because I want to make the most of it, whatever functions keep happening. So I missed a lot of them, but now I try to make up and I try to attend. I think even Taiwan actually is not that far from India, even though there's no direct flight. I was not that far, so I try to go and attend whatever I can. Yeah,
that's great.
Do you think you would want to try a completely different continent next?
Continent, yeah, say continent.
I think continent-wise, so of course Asia, Europe, North America is done. So what we're talking about,
Southern Hemisphere,
Australasia,
South America, Oceania,
Africa.
Yeah.
Maybe Middle East. I don't know.
Maybe Middle East. I mean, of these four, at least on paper, I would say I'm most excited about South America because of the like the Spanish language or things like that. But who knows? I mean, again, I don't know too many people.
Yeah.
Especially of Indian origin who have moved to South America for work.
That's fair.
Unless I'm like doing something similar to the digital nomad thing that I explored in Spain. So then maybe.
That could be an option still. Digital nomad could work out.
Could work out.
Down the line.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It sounds like you're still very open to like any possibility, which is great.
But I like that. And I also think that, at a certain point, you start feeling limited by how healthy you can keep.
Yeah.
All these moves, for example. I think you asked a question about feeling tired.
Yeah.
I think it's, at least so far, it's not feeling tired, but it's a question of, am I healthy enough physically, mentally to make the move happen?
Yeah.
So as long as I still feel that I am,
I
want to explore as much as possible. Yeah.
But I think what I hear often from other people is that with age, you have more responsibilities, more people to consider in these moves. Do you feel like that's going to become a bigger challenge as I guess as time passes?
Yeah, I mean, it's me and my partner right now, and we decided not to have kids. So if kids are not in the equation, then I think it's still the same in the sense that how we made the decision for quitting Seattle and deciding to move to Spain. But at the same time, I have other people, I have other friends in my network who have kids, and with them I've discussed the possibilities of moving here and there. So I know what kind of conversations happen and take place. Sure, again, there are more considerations to make, but some people still make the move.
Yeah, that's fair. Some people still do it.
Still make the move. I mean, for example, right now in my company, all these expats, most of them are coming with family and kids.
Wow.
They're making the move. Yeah. But I think the only thing is when the kids are really young, they of course technically don't have a choice. They're just moving with their parents, and it just goes back to what I was earlier saying about the sense of identity and growing. I think that is something, but maybe that even the parents also don't realize, because they are obviously more concerned about the schools and the education. But this is like just maybe because they don't know, because they didn't go through that journey.
Exactly, they don't have these thoughts.
They don't have these thoughts, all these issues, or they're not able to predict that this can be something which is challenging for the kid.
Yeah.
But now we know, based on our conversations, that it happens.
Yeah.
So that is a consideration to be had, I would say, when they're making this decision.
But I think even so, because some people with the same experience can say this is a bad experience, so I don't want my kids to have it, and the same people can say this was the best experience, so I want my kids to have exactly what I went through. So I don't think there's a right or wrong.
Yeah, you're right. Totally depends. Yeah. And then some kids, will thrive on it. Some kids will struggle. Exactly. The example I was giving, right, with my colleague, even though he was an adult, same experience, same onboarding, same
country of origin,
training,
right? Yeah.
Same thing, but he struggled. Yeah. Whereas the others really had a great time.
And decided to live there, right?
Live there, and I said one of them is still there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
amazing.
So based on your experience, would you recommend to others to move to Taiwan?
Yeah, 100%. Taiwan, sure, if as a student, if an opportunity, why not? Because I've met a few students here, Indian students who move here.
Oh, really?
But even otherwise, I would say, based on my experiences, like just stepping out of your own country that you grew up in, go outside, get some experience, some real life experience. As I said, it just helps to put things in perspective. I think, like, for example, even in Japan, right, I was like looking forward to my professional journey and professional skills and whatnot, but I thought there was so much learning happening even outside of work, which is invaluable. Nobody's going to come and teach you or take you through those kind of experiences. The real life experiences, they actually teach you a lot in the process, which is hard to replicate in your own country or your own super cozy setup. So I highly recommend.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it sure is. It puts putting things in perspective. I really do think it does take a certain personality, though. Now that we're talking about this,
it does, and I also think there's this element of being open to the possibility. I'll give you an example. Like, even the way my very first move, right? There were other candidates. As I said, it was a really difficult situation for students when it comes to campus recruiting. There were hardly any jobs.
Right.
And I was excited about this, but some other people that I spoke to, they were like, why would you go to Japan? Who goes to Japan? Yeah. Have you even done the analysis on the compensation? Are you sure how much you're going to make and whatnot? This, that. It's like over-analysis of the entire situation, right? Yeah. And some would just disclose off the window itself. Like, no, why? Why would you do something unconventional? Yeah. There's no precedent and this and that. There are 100 different ways you can try and make a storyline to make the opposite decision.
Of course.
Which is don't go.
Yes.
Right? And this is what I mean by just at least keep your mind open to the possibility. And the same thing one of my friends told me when I told her about making the move to Taiwan. She was like, I told her, it just popped up in my LinkedIn and I was just lucky. She was like, yeah, sure, you say that, but you don't realize you keep your mind open to you don't close it. Yeah. You always have to have the conversation. You're open to the idea of exploration.
Yeah.
So, so that also, I think, plays a role on
Mm-hmm.
whether you will get the opportunity or no, whether you will consider or no, whether you will take the plunge or no. So that is another thing that I've realized, that, just going back to your point about personality types.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just have an open mind, sure, different experiences. And I just said,
What's the worst that can
what's
happen?
the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Let's just go back to where you were.
Absolutely. And I think this is so true, not only for just like this decision, but like a great advice for life decisions.
Oh, 100%. And I'm just thinking about it now. And I would like to, obviously, after this, I want to discuss that further. As in, like, what did it take for, because, like, that sunk in really easily. Maybe it's because there was so much example behind it. We're going to discuss that a little bit later, too.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think, especially at, I guess, the 30s, I feel like a lot of classmates, friends, people we talk to, everyone's at some sort of decision-making point in life, a lot of crossroads, be it from a career perspective, be it from a family perspective, be it from a, what's my next step? Where do I want to live? Like, everyone's having these big decisions. And I do start talking to people, and I feel like many of them are maybe a little more close-minded. And it always goes back to, what's the worst that it can happen?
Yeah, I also think that, one problem area, let's say our training, we put so much focus on analytical skills and this and that, and I've seen a couple of examples where people reach out to me. Let's say when I was working in the UK office of Amazon, and someone reached out to me from Amazon India office, and they're trying to make a decision.
Right.
There's an offer on the table. They're trying to make a decision, and they're trying to ask me, but what do you think of the compensation? Is it, like substantially better than what I would make in India? And I've heard this and that, and they will show me Excel files. And I'm like, you're overthinking and overcomplicating. Even if it is only marginally better, is that the only thing?
Right.
Like what about the other aspects of living in a different country?
Yeah.
And this and that, right? Which goes back to the original point, that when we overemphasize the analytical skills, you are also, taking away from this left side of thinking, the left brain thinking, like, how do you feel? Do you feel like, does it feel right?
Right.
Those kind of things. That's nothing to do with analysis.
Yeah.
If it feels right, sure, just go, just do it.
Yeah.
And I was just telling Christina that sometimes I feel, whether it's the engineering schools or the business schools, as much as we love to like analyze and create Excel files and pivot tables and whatnot, as I've gained more experience in business, a lot of these business leaders talk about making decisions, looking at the analysis, but also relying on their instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not something which is they're born with. We need to practice it. How do you make a decision based on instinct? Yeah. As I said, also that like the split second decision when I was sitting with my father, there's the Japan offer and there's the Bangalore offer, but there was a level of instinct for sure. Like at least it feels exciting to go to Japan.
Yeah.
Or even the Korea versus Taiwan. Taiwan international expansion. Maybe I'll have more fun. These are just instincts. And then what kind of analysis can you put behind this? Yeah. But then people tend to over-index on that. And even for me, I know I was that person, and I am trying to change that for myself.
Yeah.
Hence, I can understand, who I was, how I used to make decisions, and how it's changing slowly, steadily. So, and good balance is probably the better approach when it comes to
I love it.
Yeah, making certain decisions.
Because it's just, yes, I know we're talking a lot about like making moves and career, but this is so applicable to like a lot of decisions people make these days.
Yep.
Right? Like you can extrapolate that to many things.
Many things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Don't overcomplicate it. That's the takeaway.
Yeah, exactly. Don't overanalyze. Oh, that's nice.
We definitely are taking that to heart.
Yeah, I'm taking it to heart for sure. It's nice.
You have no idea.
It relaxes me a little bit. Yeah.
Well, with that said, is there anything else that you feel like you wanted to share with us on this topic in particular, making this big move to Taiwan, hopefully home for the foreseeable, few years down the line?
No, I think, well, first of all, thanks for having me. It was a really exciting conversation. I realized I haven't, narrated this journey in a while to anyone. So it was fun. Going down the memory lane. And then, no, I think it's just, I would say, just good to stay connected to more people, who have been through similar experiences and similar journeys. So that also helps. So looking forward to see more of your guests and more of your topics.
Yay!
That you bring in season 2. So,
Thank you. We have exciting ones, so
Thank you for being here, and
pleasure.
thank you for sharing your story with us. Is there anything else that we want to add?
No, I think that's it. So thank you again, Sagar, for being here in person. You know,
Yes.
you are our first person with this setup. So
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay.
so you're a very special guest. And thank you everyone, and we'll see you guys
Next time. And I'll close it off with everyone. Don't forget to follow us on social media. They are below you, and we'll see you next time. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.